Well, and I love that too because, and we didn't talk a lot about this last week, but why are we nice to people? Why do we take our shopping cart? Why do we pick up trash? Why do we choose not to litter? Why are we nice to the woman in Walmart who we will never see again? Because we honor people, and people are going to come behind us, and we want people to know that they're important to us, kind of like we talked about the greeter at church. He's special to us. We like him, this person. And what would happen if we taught our kids to honor people? Put people before yourself. Make people important. That's huge. And to pre-teach and help them understand and then do it. I mean, that could be a game changer in your life. Because again, more is caught than taught. How do you treat people? I don't care. I'm never going to see them again. Not my problem. That's the kind of child you raise then. It really is. But what would happen if we ushered people in, if we were nice to people, if we served people? You will raise children like that. You know, are you the home that welcomes people? Are you the person who gives to people that don't have as much as you? You are modeling. Why do you do that? Because I know God loves that person. But what she did was she set up the situation, this is what's going to happen. Instead of just saying, they're coming and you better do the right thing or everybody's going to be punished. You told them why, you set up the situation, you got ready. So the pre-teaching is important. What about teaching in a non-conflict time? Did anybody have their child do something, and then instead of reacting right then, later on you taught them in a non-conflict time and told them why? Did anybody have that situation? And that, we talked about this a little bit last week, but if your standard is the Word of God, that's a great standard because you have some standard. We talked about last week, it's so gray, and if we go by culture, it depends on which family you're following. It depends on which friend you're following. But if you have a standard, this is what we do. And I told this last week is that I did tell my kids, because I truly believe that someday I will stand before God. He gave me this child to raise, to do the best that I can, and I'm going to have to stand for him someday and go, well, just too much time. I just didn't feel like it. I hate conflict, so I let them do what they want when they want it. It was just easier that way. I didn't take the time to invest in what you gave me, and I'm accountable for that. So I used to say, you can be mad if you want, but this is the rule book. This is what we're following, and God promises us that if we follow His plan, then it's going to turn out good. So let's do this. And so I love that. I love that piece as well. So again, we talked about bedtime, when they're in the car. Think of those non-conflict times that you could be teaching. So we'll have that. You guys can watch it that we're gone. Are you characterized as a parent by reacting to your child or calmly responding? And so you don't have to share that out loud, but are you a reactor or a responder? If I ask your child, what would they say? Does your mom calmly answer you, or does she freak out? A or B? Give an example of some ways you deposited it into your child's moral bank this week. I'm hoping you have an answer for number 3. Okay? Don't take this lightly. This is important. You are depositing in the most important thing that you can deposit in. Did you give them a reason why you want them to obey? Or do you just hope they grow up okay? And like we talked about the first lesson, do you want them to become you? Somebody may have deposited in you and you've done really well, but there also are things that someone forgot to deposit in you or they didn't. And do you want to do that? And then number 5, an example of a teachable or pre-teaching moment. We talked a little bit about that. Did anybody do a pre-teaching moment before they went to Walmart or to church this week? Tell me about that.
We went into Walmart, it would have been Sunday. And like before we went in, like on the way there, I told her like what we were going in for. She got a girl outfit, so that's good. That's something we've been working on. And
She got a what?
A girl outfit, like a skirt and leggings
Okay,
and some rainbow shoes.
Okay.
She likes sweatpants and baggy
Okay.
So, anyway,
She got rainbow shoes.
we talked about it. I told her, I was like, well, we're gonna go in. This is all that we're getting. She's trying, like, I have a hard time telling her no. So this is definitely something for both of us. But I told her, I said, we're gonna go into the girl section, and you can get one outfit out of anything in the girl section. I said, but that's all that we're getting, nothing else. And that's all we got.
It's good. It's good. It's good.
But we talked about it before we went in, so she had an understanding of what we were doing rather than just yelling at her, like, we're staying right here, we're not taking off,
Right,
you know.
right, it's good. It's good. That's excellent. You will be amazed at, and we're going to talk about today, setting up the expectation. If we know what to expect, then we know whether we're going to choose to do it or not. But if there's no expectation, then we don't know. So use those teachable moments. And then the last one is, in what specific areas are you praying for God to give you wisdom in parenting? If you are a parent, you shouldn't be okay with where you are. You should always want to be bettering yourself. Do you want your kids to continue to better themselves? Then that's what you model. And so if there's a specific area that you want to grow in, write that down. Ask God to give you wisdom in that. He wants you to be a good parent as well. So be sure that you do that. All right, let's go ahead and go to session 4. Okay, we've been laying a lot of foundations up to this point. All right, we've talked about modeling. That's about me, right? That's about you as parents, that modeling. We talked about building a foundation. Who's building the foundation? You or your children? You are as parents, all right? The third one was pay now or pay later. Who's doing the depositing? You are. All 3 of these aren't about how to shape your child. They're how to shape you as a parent. This class is for you and not for your child, all right? Now today, we're gonna move into some really practical things that you can do with your kids, all right? But if you are not doing these 3, this one will not matter. This is the one that you come in and go, okay, just skip to number 4. I just want to know how to make them obey. But if you're not doing this, it won't matter. You can yell and you can scream and you can do whatever, but if you're doing, or you can talk nice to them, you can do, but you're doing opposite, it's not going to matter, okay? If your life is chaos and unstable all the time, it's not going to matter because your child won't know how to do it. If you don't train their heart, you may be able to get them to obey. And today we're going to talk about threatening, repeating parenting. You might get them to obey, but it won't matter when they're 20. All right? And so all those are important. But to talk about consistency and order brings freedom. If you look at page 27, Proverbs 29, 17, and 18, and this is in the New Living Translation, which I think is really, really good. So listen to it, and then you can go back and look it up later. But it says, discipline your children, and they will give you peace of mind and will make your heart glad. When people do not accept divine guidance, they run wild. But whoever obeys the law is joyful. So you as a parent, you can have peace of mind, your heart can be glad, and you can be joyful. It can be a good thing to be a parent. But if you choose no discipline and you're running wild and you're letting your child run wild, you're not giving them any guidance, then you're going to have a problem. And so I love that verse. I think it's a promise that we can stand on. So let's look at the objective on page 27. It says, parents will benefit from clear expectations and consistent follow-through when expectations are not met. Chaos, inconsistency, repeated instruction, repeated warnings, and unclear boundaries and expectations bring frustration to the child. When children have structure, routine, expectations, consistency, as well as both responsibility and freedoms in their lives, they thrive. So tonight we're going to talk about routine, schedule, structure, consistency. Now, how many of you, just by those things, you're like, ooh, that one's going to be a tough one for me? Even in your own life, maybe, all right? So we're going to look at those. Let's look at the pre-video questions there. The first one says is, what routines or schedules do you currently have set in place in your home? So we're going to talk about the starting point first. What are you currently doing in your home that has to do with structure and routine? What routines are you already doing? What structure do you place? Write that down. Okay, does anybody have, or somebody share about a routine or a schedule? This is what it says, schedules that you have in your home. Either maybe if you're a parent that you've already raised your kids and you're getting ready to do foster care or whatever, something that you had that was a structured routine, or something that you currently do that's a structured routine. Anybody have one? Share.
I think for us, when we wake them up in the morning, without telling them, they know to go in the bathroom, go potty, brush your teeth, get dressed.
Okay. Every morning.
In that order, every morning.
Okay. Perfect.
Our preschool routine.
Okay, okay.
Like before school.
The day
Oh,
that
yeah,
you're going
yeah,
to school.
yeah.
Okay, so that's a great example. We're gonna be talking about that. Having a structured routine, that seems pretty basic, right? But she said, did you hear, without telling them, because it's what we always do. So we're gonna talk about the importance of that. The second one is, do you often find yourself repeating instruction to your child over and over before you get them to obey? Giving warnings, counting. Do you find yourself, this is a yes or no question, so write it down. Yes or no. Do you find yourself, now, none of us are perfect, but typically, do you find yourself saying it over and over and over again? Guess what? This isn't a kid problem. This is a parent problem. I know. Did I just step on your toes? It's hard because we want our kids, why can't they just do it the first time I tell them? Because you've conditioned them to not, all right? And so we're going to talk about that. Aren't you so glad you're here? Okay, all right. Number 3, are you consistent with expectations and follow through in your home? Okay, what that means is if I ask your children about different areas, would they know what you expect of them? And would they say, would you find yourself consistent? This is what I expect of you, and I always follow through when they don't do it. Okay? How many of you just honestly have trouble with consistency and follow through? Most parents, I did. That's a tough one because it depends a lot of times on the environment, how you're feeling, what your day was like. Anybody like that? How tired you are, how happy you are. Do you parent according to your emotion for the day? You parent according to your environment. Okay, that today we're going to really look at that. That's a really important thing to think about because we should be the same parent whether things are going bad, good, or things are going bad, whether we're happy or where we're sad. Our children always know what to expect. That's the ultimate goal in this, all right? So let's flip over to page 28. And we're going to look at 3 areas today. There's a lot covered in here, but these are really, really important. This used to be 7 weeks. And we've done some weekend workshops at some churches, and we needed to condense it down to 6 weeks, so we combined two of the lessons. So I'm going to give you a lot today, but I'm going to give you some extra reading here in the book as well, so that you can look at it on your own. But we're going to concentrate on 3 areas. The first one is the importance of building routine and structure. We need to have routine and structure in your home. There needs to be things that are the same every single time. How many of your kids like to watch the same movie over and over again? Why? Why do they like that?
Familiar.
It's familiar. They know what's going to happen. It's the same. Same way for you. They need to know what's going to happen and have an expectancy, all right? So we're going to talk about that. Then we're going to talk about having clear expectations and consistently following through. Do your kids know what to do? Like you guys mentioned that they automatically know what to do every day. We want to make that across the board. Our kids know what's expected. When we go to Walmart, they know what's expected. It's the same every time. Okay? When we get ready to go to bed, they know what the bedtime routine is. It's the same every time. When we ask them to do something, if they don't obey, this is a consequence. It's the same every time. And so we want to look at those. That's the second one. And the third one is having clear responsibilities and freedoms. This can be a game changer in parenting no matter how old your kids are. If their responsibilities and their freedoms are equal, you've got this thing made. All right, so we're going to talk about that. All right, so let's look at the top paragraph in here. And just so we kind of have an overview, it says, through this session, you are concentrating on 3 areas. The importance of building routine and structure in daily life. We all like having clear understanding of how things are going to happen, especially if they are routine everyday activities. As you incorporate routine into your daily activities, eating, sleeping, going to school, going to work, it will become a habit for your children and your daily life will run smoothly. If you do not currently have routine and structure in your home, this will take time to incorporate, but will be well worth the effort as you see the benefits of less stress and a well-run home. Okay, what you need to know is this. How many of you have children? Raise your hand if your children are over the age of 8. Over the age of 8. Okay. So what you need to know is this. How old is your little boy?
I have a 7-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Okay, so even for 7, this would be good. Okay, the older they are, if you have not had structure or routine, it will take longer to get there. Okay? The 2-year-old, pretty quickly you can get that structure in place. But I want to encourage you, don't give up. Don't be like, lost time. If they're 10, if they're 12, don't do that. You're setting yourself up for failure. It's okay. It's just going to take longer. You're going to have to be diligent. You're going to have to really mean what you say and say what you mean. And so it's really important. But routine and structure is super important. When you bring that in for the first time, if your child is old, you get that sort of roll in the eyes, things like, seriously, I've been able to do what I want my whole life, and now you're going to add structure and routine. Well, you're going to go back and you're going to say, at our parenting class, they said we had to do this, so I have to do it. It's the law. This is what I learned tonight. And even that, up to this point, I haven't done it very well. I apologize, but from now on, this is how we're going to do it. Now, you'll have to follow through with what that is. So let's look
Which will
at.
make you tired.
Huh?
Which will make you tired.
Which will make you tired.
But you'll pay off.
It'll pay off, very good. All right, let's look at, I'm gonna have you flip through and look at page 35. It's at the end of this same session, and I put it in there, and you can go back and look at it. But there are some specific times where you can have routine and structure. The nice thing about it is this: you're already all sleeping, you're already all eating, you're all already going to school and work, and you're all already doing household chores. You're doing it. But you get to put routine and structure into these common everyday activities. So it is not a fight. Those of you who have 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, you know what I'm saying. If you've never built in routine and structure and it is a consistent fight. As a matter of fact, you're like, I just can't wait till they're 18 and out of here because I'm tired of fighting it, right? And so we look at those. Let's look at some of these. The first one is eating. Okay, we all have to eat. I'm going to add just a little side note. This is a bonus that you'll want to take. I'm not going to make you pay extra for this. This is a good one, all right? Are you listening? That's supposed to be a joke. You don't have to pay extra for this. All right. They have proven that if you will sit down as a family and eat together, your children will have less teenage issues. Now, that's pretty wild. Why do you think that that's true?
More open communication.
Because they'll talk to you.
Okay, you both said the same thing. There's a sense of communication, okay? If you are continually setting your child aside, you're just doing what you gotta do to hurry up and get where you gotta be, do life, and then when they turn 13 or 14, all of a sudden you're like, we gotta sit down and have a conversation. We gotta talk about things like sex, drugs, and right? And they're like, what? This is the first time you've even talked to me. And all of a sudden you wanna have this big talk, okay? Like we talked about last week. But that time, that may be, for us, I know when our kids got older, that was the only time we were all together doing that. But I couldn't start it at 13. I had to start it way back. Have a place where you go and you meet up every day. Dinner is just a great place to do that. You talk, you have conversation. I would encourage you to sit down together as a family. Whoever's fixing the meal, whether that's mom or dad, when the food, that you wait for them to get there. Okay? Pray together. If there's no other time you're praying together as a family, you have an excuse. You can go home and say, the parenting class said we should pray over our food. Let's try it. Okay? All right? Then you sit down, you talk together. I would encourage you to have everybody sit at the table until everybody's done. Now that's a crazy thing. Why would you do that?
So they don't feel alone. They're just sitting there. Everybody else is getting up and moving. They're not
Okay.
gonna wanna finish their meal. They're gonna wanna get up and.
Plus, you are so
go their
important to
own
me,
separate way.
and you are my mom. And I'm gonna wait till you're done eating. And you're saying, we love your mom. We honor her, we're gonna stay here. Plus, have you ever have you not wanted to ever take your child out to eat at a sit-down restaurant because you're like, oh, no way. No way, no way. We're gonna have to sit there and wait for our food? There is no way. Why not? You didn't do it at home, you can't do it there. You're practicing for that time. What if a friend calls and says, we would love to take your family out to dinner, and you're like, I cannot do this. This would be horrible. That's really nice of them, but they have no idea what they're getting into because our kids are hellions and they cannot sit still and they will be loud and they will be rude. Practice at home.
And a pre-teach all the way there.
Pre-teach them, there you go, okay? So just that in itself, that could be the first routine and structure. We're sitting down together, we're eating, and we're having a conversation. Our kids, even when they would come home from college, I was shocked. I was like, I can't believe they're still doing this. They'd be like, may we be excused? I know, old school. But it was great. Nobody left the table because we wanted that time together. And there were times when they didn't want to stay sitting there. But we thought it was that important. And they'd say, may we be excused? And then they were permission to leave the table. I know, crazy, but I'm telling you, okay, you can look at me crazy, but I just want to tell you that I'm talking from the other end of this and have raised children. And some of those things that seem silly even to them, now they're practicing and they turned out to be pretty good adults. All right? And so you're teaching some of those things. Plus the communication goes on and on. Okay, what other routine and structures could you put in place besides sitting together at the table, but sitting together as a family at the table? getting ready for the meal or cleaning up the meal? Are there routines and structures that you do in your home that have been effective that maybe the rest of us could learn from?
Our two oldest clear the table and wash the dishes.
Okay, crazy. Okay, how old are they?
14 and 3.
How long have they done this?
Most since they could.
Okay, since they
Years.
could. Start the routine of, even when they're almost too little to carry the plate themselves, take time to help them carry their plate. Let them help you load the dishwasher. Now, is it easier to do it yourself at this point, when they're little? Yes. Is it easier for you to pick up their toys? Absolutely. But you built the routine in so that when they're 10 and 14, they think that's what people do. Crazy. But at 14, all of a sudden, we're making a new rule, you're gonna start doing the dishes. You're gonna have a fight on your hands. But all along the way, they have done that, and that's what you've done, all right? So that's a really good one, cleaning up, but let them help when it's hard for them to help. What about letting them put their own shoes on? It takes twice as long, and it's hard, but what are you doing? You're helping train them, it takes time. Remember, good parenting takes time. So think of ways that you can help set up routines and eating. Bedtime and wake time, you guys talked about a morning routine, a bedtime routine. Anybody fight to get their kids to bed? Okay, setting up a routine and structure. Some things that you can do is set a warning, okay? Before they can tell time. In 5 minutes, we're going to get ready for bed. In 10 minutes, we're gonna get ready for bed. So everybody has a warning. One of the worst things, none of us like that. Do you ever doing something where somebody goes, no, we're going now. I hate that. Like, give me a warning. Like, I know we're gonna go, now everybody's in the car. Oh, no, this is not gonna work for me. I need to have some warning to get ready and so your kids are the same way. Why aren't you obeying me right now? Well, I can't, my head is spinning. I'm not sure what we're doing. So give that 5-minute warning. And then one of the things that a couple of years ago we did a parenting class, and they were having a horrible time getting their child to go to bed. I mean, it's like a big deal. Every night, big fight. Like I think they had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. Was just huge. And so we talked about routine and structure, and she's like, you know what, tonight I'm gonna go home and make a picture chart for my refrigerator. And I was like, well, that's not that big a deal, that's good, okay? So she made a picture chart for the 3-year-old and the 5-year-old. She said, by the next week, he said, I don't need that chart anymore. But they'd say, okay, it's time for go to bed, go look. And you look at the first picture, go brush his teeth, come back, look at the chart. It was get a drink of water, go back, look at the chart. Put your pajamas on, crawl in bed, all right? So, but it was the same every time. Now, what that takes is this. You've got to be ready to help them for a while, and you have to be home to put them to bed. There's a lot of us that parent, I hope nobody in this room, those other people out there that aren't in parenting class, this is how some of them parent, right? We just live life. What comes, all right? So that would look like this. I've seen this before, where when we're hungry, we just find something to eat. There's no set meal times, right? When we're tired, we just drop wherever we drop, okay? There's no set place we sleep. There's no set place we get ready. It's just chaos. And we can't figure out why our kids won't obey us, why there's no structured routine. They have no idea what to expect. No idea. I really believe there are children in our society that we call them children of the jungle. I mean, it really is whatever will be, will be. Okay, taking them places at night, maybe to friends' house and partying with them, and then you've got your kid with you and they just fall asleep wherever. Okay, in order to have routine and structure at bedtime and in the morning, you've got to be home to do that at a decent time. Not always, not 100% of the time, but you're characterized by doing that, have a routine and structure in their life. Morning time. Anybody else have morning struggles? Morning was my high stress time. Morning. What do some of you do for routine and structure so morning is less stressful? Set out the clothes the night before. That's huge. Okay. You can do things like put their shoes in their backpack by the door before they go and everything's in it. Okay, what about those notes that need to be signed for the field trip? Anybody else have trouble with those? I wish Phil were here to tell you stories. Kids in the office calling. I had high school kids calling. They forgot their research paper cards, and I said, or their note cards. And I would say, well, you should have thought of that. No, Mrs. Heeke, I will not graduate without this. I'm like, okay, And so sure enough, they call the mom, and the mom leaves work and comes to bring the note cards. I guarantee you that was not the first time she rescued her child. She'd been doing it over and over and over again, and now they're 18. No worries. We're still gonna be rescued. Do we have any helicopter parents in here that would confess it? Okay, we'll move on.
My kids knew if they didn't get to school with it, they weren't gonna
They
get
were
it.
gonna get it. And so they got to school with it, right?
They knew it was
Okay,
gonna call them.
I tell my kid, well, looks like you're gonna have attention.
good for you. That's good for you. You guys are not the norm, I'm telling you.
I'm a helicopter parent.
We
I was
have a
like,
confession here.
Okay, Drew. I'll
My name
bring
is
it to
Stacy and
you."
I'm a helicopter parent. Hi, Stacy. All right.
You turned out pretty good, though.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
That's-
true.
Um,
I do that with Destiny.
But if the morning is your problem, find out why. And I've told this story. I was a yeller on the way to school because my son could never get up and he could never find his shoes. And I remember one day thinking, okay, this is the same thing every day. This is my problem. And so realizing that he was easy because he didn't want to get up in the morning, but I couldn't get him to go to bed at night. So we would do everything at night. Lay the backpack there, get the shoes there, get the clothes laid out. I mean, honestly, all he had to do is just slip into him. I would even sometimes have him lay his his breakfast there. We got a Pop-Tart and we got the juice right there ready to go on the way out the door because I knew that's what was going to happen. And so I set him up for success. My daughter, we couldn't even keep her awake to do her homework. I mean, 8 o'clock, she's done. She was asleep. Well, then we knew that we could get her up an hour ahead of time and she could get her stuff ready. Know your kids, but set them up for success. Have those routines
Put
ready
a
to
shoe
go.
bin by the door.
What?
Put a shoe bin by the door.
Absolutely. Shoe and backpack by the door. You're just sliding.
The foster kids would have the shoes everywhere.
Okay.
And like when you take your shoes off, they go in the bin.
Yeah.
Because they never can find their shoes.
Yeah. It's good. It's good. Those are structure and routine. That's the same every time. Playtime. Do you make your kids pick up their toys before they get out the next toy? I mean, that's, again, a routine and structure. It's how you do it every time. It's a habit. Okay, but wait. Do you put something away before you get the next thing out? Okay, go back to rule number 1, right? You have to build some structure and routine in your life if you want them to. If your life is chaos, there's no structure, there's no routine, you're very unorganized and don't have self-discipline, you're gonna have to go back to number 1 because you're never gonna teach them unless you will do it as well. All right? And for some of us, I mean, you gotta admit, some of your personalities love that. Some of you thrive on that. Like, you are just so, are you, Bridget? So happy about that. Like, I like lists, I like color-coded things. And some of you are like, why? Why would you want to be that way? So if that's you, you're gonna have to work a little bit towards that. And you'll have kids the same way. I mean, you'll have kids that love to line up their shoes. And then you'll have kids that like, no matter what you do, never gonna happen. Well, then every day that might be, this is what we're gonna do. It becomes a routine and structure, all right? Activities, develop interest in your child through activities is very important. Evaluate what is most important for your child. Some of you are struggling with, you have so much going on in your life, there is no possible way you can develop any routine or structure. You're lucky to get to the next activity, and you're really lucky if you're on time, because you're running all the time. I hear people say all the time, kids should not have homework. We do not have time for homework. Why don't you have time for homework? How many activities do you have your children in that you are so busy running all the time that you're lucky if you'd have one night at home a month? And there are people like that. So decide what's most important. One of the things on page 35, and I need to move on, but under activities, the last bullet said a child's spiritual, emotional, and cognitive growth needs to be considered when committing to an activity. What do you want your child to learn? At the end of the day, they're 18 years old. What is going to be most important to them? Is it going to be that they were the best soccer player? Or is it going to be that they knew structure and routine, they got their homework done? Is it that they had good friends? You know, you just have to decide for yourself what's most important and then put your most time into that. School and homework, again, that helicopter piece, one of the best things you can do is teach responsibility. And so if your child calls you from school, you've got to decide if you're going to let them take the consequences or not. Your child forgets their school note to go on a field trip. They can't go on a field trip unless they have that note. Are you going to take the note to them?
Maybe one time.
It's a skating trip.
maybe one time, okay? And then I'm not gonna do it again, okay? Will you follow through with that?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. If you will follow through on those kinds of things, the next time they won't do it. I'm telling, it wasn't easy for me. That one was a hard one for me. You're better than I was at that. Because I wanted them to go on the field trip. I thought, oh, the thought of them sitting in the library while everybody in their class went on a field trip.
They made a choice.
I know. So I think that you do. You have to be consistent. You have to decide. That's hard. That's a hard one. But be very careful not to train them that they don't have to obey the first time. They don't have to remember things because you are always going to save them.
If you count to 5, they know you're always going to count.
That's right. That's right. All right. So we know structure and routine. Let's go back to the second one. The second one is clear expectations and follow through. If you want your kids to obey, they need to know what you expect of them. They need to, in order to play the game, they have to know the rules. And so if you look at this, when you ask your child to do something, are they characterized by doing it? And if not, what do they say? Think of your child. When you say, pick up your toys, do they just go pick up their toys? When you say to your teenager, take out the trash, they're like, yes, ma'am, boom, on that trash.
On toys, it was always like, I didn't get them all out. You know?
Okay, so there could be excuses, all right? So, but what you're gonna set up in this, and you'll have to do it to make it happen. You can't just say it, but you can go home today and say, okay, we're gonna try first time obedience, first time compliance. When I ask you to do something, I need you to do it, okay? This is how it's going to work, and you may have that. You may just say, you may do some pre-teaching. Tomorrow, when we get home from school, you're going to play with the same toy you play, your Legos or whatever, okay? So I'm going to give you time, and then when I say it's time to pick up the Legos, you're going to say okay, and you're going to pick up your Legos, right? Okay, everybody got it? Everybody know the rules? That's what we're doing, okay? All right. So
And if you don't-
expectations. And then, I wouldn't even say that, because it almost as if we're trying to get them to obey without being afraid of a consequence, all right? And so you're going to tell them what you want, and you're going to expect it. So you get home, they play with their Legos, you're like, okay, time to pick up your Legos, and you walk out, and you know there's no stinking way they're going to do it.
But when you pre-teach and you tell them that, and they say, well, what if I don't? That's what Cody would say, what if I don't?
Well, we'll just see what happens. Just see, not Cody, not sweet Cody. All right, so you tell them, and then consistently you have a follow-through every single time, what you want, what you're going to do. But here's the key, we're gonna have, not only are we gonna have a consistent expectation and the consistent follow-through, we're gonna do it calmly. Anybody have trouble with calm parenting? All right, so that means that if they don't do it, and they say things like, oh, I forgot you said I had to obey the first time. Or as you have older kids, here's your list. Or have that done before I get home. Oh man, I forgot. I didn't hear you. Anybody ever hear those? Okay.
Oh, I thought you said that.
I thought you said, okay. You know what? I am really sorry that you didn't hear me. And I'm sorry that you didn't understand, but this is the consequences for you not doing what I said. We're not going to give them the benefit of that. Even if they didn't hear it, the next time they'll hear. The next time they'll be listening. But if they can, if your kids do that, they've learned to do that over and over and over again, and you just don't want to fight them, so you just let it go. All right. What about giving warnings? Do we have any counters in here? You girls are like confessing all kinds of things tonight. Okay. You need to get over here. I'm gonna count to 3, and you better get over here. 1, 2, 2.5. Did you hear me? I'm almost to 3. Okay, now we've warned them 5 times to do what we say. Do you think they're not hearing you?
No, they're here.
They're choosing to disobey, okay? What would happen if there was a consequence when they didn't do it? Now that you've conditioned them, actually what you've said to them is, when I call you, I need you to come, and then when you don't come, I'm gonna wait 2 more minutes and count to get you to come. and then I'm gonna get mad. That's what you've said. So that's the expectation you've given them without giving that expectation, right? Okay. When you say to your 12-year-old, I'm gonna be home at 5 o'clock, make sure the trash is picked up and the dishes are done, and you come in, the trash is never taken out and the dishes are never done, or they hear you open the garage door and all of a sudden they're standing there doing them, that's not before you got home. You gave them expectation, but you didn't really mean it, right? You didn't really mean it. That's what a warning does. And so, but that takes consistency every single time, all right? So there's no excuses in this, there's no warning. Threatening and repeating. Okay, does this sound like you? Anybody in the room? Okay, stand up if my story makes sense in your house as I go. I'm just kidding. Because these girls will be standing up. Okay. Your child is in their room playing. Okay? Child is in their room playing, and it's time for them to go to bed. So you go in and you say, in 5 minutes, I need you to pick up these Legos that you're playing with. We're going to go to bed. All right? I'm going to go set the timer for 5 minutes. Or as a matter of fact, I'm going to bring the timer in your room. Set it for 5 minutes, okay? In 5 minutes, I'm going to tell you to pick up the Legos, all right? So you give them a warning. Set the timer for 5 minutes, okay? You come in, dinger goes off, you come in and say, okay, it's been 5 minutes, I need you to pick up your Legos, okay? I need you to pick them up right now because we're gonna get ready to go to bed, okay? Now you do this tomorrow and you're thinking, they're not gonna obey me. They just won't do it. I know they're not gonna do it. So you go back in, and, okay, let's erase this. You haven't been to parenting class. We're going to do the bad thing first. All right. So you go in and say, pick up the Legos. They don't go in and they haven't picked up the Legos. And so your typical response is, did you hear me? I said, I gave you a warning. You need to pick up your Legos. Now, I mean it. I'm going to be back here in a few minutes, and you better be picking up those Legos. Okay? So you go, you come back, and they're still playing with their Legos. No Legos have picked up. You're like, now I am serious. You need to get those Legos picked up. Okay. You start putting them in the thing. You need to get those Legos picked up. You know, you've raised your voice a little now. They're thinking you're serious. Okay. So they start, while you're standing there, they're putting them away. You walk away and you come back, haven't picked up those Legos. So then your voice gets louder and you are mad and you start threatening. I'm going to take those Legos and throw them out in the trash. You better get this done. Okay, I am. Okay. You come back and they're like, half the Legos are picked up, but they're still playing with the Legos. And you're like, seriously? And then you're mad and you're ranting and you're raving. Just forget it. You kick a Lego. Just get to bed. It's too late now. We got to get to bed. Okay? It's all over. Okay? Now, what did you ask them to do? Let's replay it. Here's how we should do it. All right, so you go, give it 5 minutes. You need to pick up your Legos. Okay, so you go in. Okay, now it's time to pick up your Legos. You go in. They have not picked up their Legos. Okay, you say, okay, it's time to go to bed. I'm sorry you chose not to pick up your Legos, but we got to go to bed now. We're not going to stalling techniques. This is what we're going to do. Get up, put your pajamas on, and we're going to, we'll handle this later. Get in bed, go to bed, non-conflict. Talk about, maybe you could talk about why it's important to pick up our Legos. Why do we pick them up before we go to bed? Because I come in here in the morning and have a Lego through my foot, and we're learning to take care of our Legos and put them away each time, whatever, okay? So, but there's no conflict. You don't pick up the Legos, okay? They're old enough to do this, all right? Don't pick up the Legos. They go to bed, okay? You get up the next morning, get dressed, you go to school, okay? On the way home, you say, okay, when we get home, you need to pick up your Legos. And we're gonna go in there. We're gonna pick up your Legos. So you walk in. There's no snack first. There's no TV first. Nothing. I asked you to pick up your Legos last night. You chose to disobey. You understood. You go in. You may even stand there with them, help them pick up the Legos or whatever. Then you put the Legos away. These Legos are gone for a week. All right. So I'm sorry you chose not to obey, and I know how much you love playing with these Legos. But in a week we'll try again and see if you can pick them up. But I ask you to do this. This is what I need you to do, and you chose not to do it. So this is the consequence. Okay. So in a week, try it again. Okay. That you may need to put them away for 2 weeks. Whatever it is, find your consequence. Follow through. The consequence isn't the yelling and screaming. If you're a yelling and screaming parent, what you will find is that they get this glazed look when you start yelling and screaming. They're so used to you yelling and screaming, they don't even hear you anymore. They know how to check out from the situation.
That's not the case with my 5-year-old.
No? Okay.
No. She yells and screams back.
Okay. So that, again.
That's actually worse.
And we're going to talk about that. we've taken them to the point where you're having a battle with a 5-year-old, okay? But what would happen if you did it calmly like that and said, this is the
I've
expectation.
actually started doing that, and
This
she's
is a-
like, she doesn't know how to,
Shocked.
yeah, she
She's
doesn't know how, she doesn't know how to act.
Okay, but that's consistent every time. They know what you want, there is always a consequence. They know what you want, there's always a consequence. And the yelling and screaming isn't part, everybody's just too stressed out. But there has to be, and you may have to change your consequences, all right? So you want to tell them the expectation that you want a consequence. And the follow through has to be there. There's a verse that's really good. Let's see if I can find it here. It talks about in James 6 or Ephesians 6:4. It says, "Parents, do not exasperate your children." Right after that, it'll say, "Children, obey your parents." But it says, "Parents, don't exasperate your child." And exasperate means bring them to the point of frustration. Okay, and I would even say if they're yelling back at you, okay, and they're page 30, and they're throwing a fit, they're exasperated, you're exasperated, is it doing any good? Have you gotten your children to obey you? No. Okay, we also, in James 1:19 and 20, it talks about anger is not from the Lord. So the anger that you give is not, when you exasperate them and then they come to anger, we're doing something wrong. That's not effective parenting, all right? Okay, and then the last one, I think this is the one that I think you're really going to grab onto, is the difference between freedoms and responsibilities.
Real quick, can I add something?
Yes.
You might have to take several deep breaths
Yeah.
to get through that.
Yeah, that's really
And that
good.
really does help.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
brings oxygen to
That's
your
really
brain and
good.
helps you.
Carry a bag with you.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that's a key point because we don't choose to parent out of emotion. It just comes all over us.
Yeah.
There is a sense of, how could they just not be doing what I say? I mean, this is clear. But the last thing you want to do, Phil and I used to look at each other and go, is this a hill you want to die on? Because once you get to a power struggle with a child, you may lose. There's a really good chance if your emotions are wrapped in it, we talked about this a little bit last week, and their emotions are wrapped in it, somebody's going to lose and it may be you. Don't get to the point of exasperation. Okay, the way we do that is we choose, what did he say last week? It takes one to have,
I wrote it down.
okay, that was really good.
Somebody wrote it.
It takes one.
One fool to start an argument, 2 fools to have a conversation about it.
Yeah, one fool to start an argument, 2 fools to have a conversation over that argument. So you don't have to say anything. I don't want to clean my room. We just walk away. Okay, we just walk away from that. That's really good. That's a good point, finding that. And you may have to walk away and then come back. They don't have to do it right this minute. If it means that you're going to get into an emotional, then walk away and come back. They'll remember. It's okay. Or wait till the next morning. I know we used to have a rule that don't get into it after 9 o'clock. You're going to lose, they're going to lose. And we used to have a big one on, we would say Thursday nights are off limits. No big decisions made on Thursday nights. I don't know why, but for some reason Thursday nights just seem to be, everybody's so tired by Thursday night, we just had to survive Thursday nights. Friday, I don't know what happens all of a sudden, you're like, whoo, it's Friday, I'm feeling good now. But Thursday, everybody's so tired. So we knew that about ourselves. Okay, we're just gonna get through this night. Then we'll work on things in the morning, or work on things tomorrow. And so, but you know your family, you know when your buttons are gonna be pushed. Don't go head to head. Don't go head to head. Don't have a power struggle with your child, or try to avoid that if you can. All right, the next one is freedoms and responsibilities. And I want you to think about the difference between a freedom and a responsibility. Think out loud on this. What would be considered a freedom to your child? That would be something that they love to do, that you just let them do, they enjoy doing, they like doing. What's a freedom that you give your child that they enjoy? Just talk about it at your table for a minute. What's a freedom that you might have that they like?
Playing games.
She has art pencil that she likes to draw on, and she has drawing books, everything.
What do they like to do?
Arts.
Okay, play on the phone.
Drawing.
Drawing and art. What? Jumping on the trampoline. Watching TV. Spending time with friends. Going to sporting activities. Right? Those are things that they enjoy doing. Those are considered freedoms. Right? Even the freedom of, just sitting around doing nothing, watching TV, all those are freedoms. Okay, so what are responsibilities then? What are some things that your children may not always like to do, but because they're part of your family, they have those responsibilities? Talk about that for a minute. What are some responsibilities?
She does not like to pay her. You stand by her room and it's like, it's sucked into this big black.
Okay, her take the trash out of her clean room. What else? Feed the dog.
Pick up toys.
Pick up toys.
Clean the table.
Clean off the table, what? Do their homework. Okay. How about talk respectfully to you? Is that a responsibility? Be kind to their siblings, huh?
And others.
Be kind to others and talk nicely to others. Okay? Those are responsibilities that we don't always feel like doing, but we do. You go to school. You get places on time. Those are responsibilities that we have. All right, now this is big. Listen to this. Okay, what we want to do is this. We want to have both freedoms and responsibilities. We want our children to have both. Let me explain something to you and see if this is what has happened. This is what, a lot of times what happens in parenting is this. You've got a child that's little, 2, 3, 4 years old. They may have a 2, 3, or 4-year-old. Okay, listen to this. See if this describes them. They have a lot of freedoms. Okay? They play on your electronic devices whenever they want. They watch TV a lot. They know how to get their own snacks. They know how to turn on and off the TV. They pretty well just do what they want when they want, right? Okay? They choose you let them choose what to wear because they'll throw a fit if you don't. You let them choose what color cup they drink out of. Those all sound like simple, none of those are bad behaviors. Not a single one of those things I said is a bad behavior, right? So I give this child the freedoms. Okay, so what happens when they're 4? They get even more freedoms, right? They pretty well get to do what they want. You have friends over with them to play. You let them make lots and lots of decisions. And they're 6. Okay, let's go back to 4. What are the responsibilities of a 4-year-old? Very little. Very little. Even the things you are making them be responsible for, you're helping them along the way, right? They aren't responsible to do things on their own. But yet, what do they have? Lots of freedoms. So what we've done in parenting is this: as they get older, we keep giving them more and more freedoms, but we don't give them we don't expect anything from them. So you may have a 15 or 16-year-old that expects you to let them drive, expects you to let them have a cell phone, expects you to let them go wherever they want with their friends, but they don't take out the trash. They don't clean up, they don't even pick up their own stuff. And you can't figure out why you have a problem on your hands. Okay, let's go back. Aren't you glad you're here and your child's only 4? Okay, here we go. All right, so we have to decide what is a freedom that a 4-year-old can have and what's a responsibility that a freedom can have. As they get more freedoms, they get more responsibilities. As they get more freedoms, they get more responsibilities. It's just natural. So when they're 14, they do get to go to a friend's house, but they always do the dishes. It lines up, all right? And so you have to think about that. They need to be equal. So I'm going to have you look at, on page 33, there's some freedoms and responsibilities that you can look at there. And I've given ideas, but these aren't set in stone. These are just ideas that you might think about of things that you can have common responsibilities for 2 to 5-year-olds and then common freedoms. I would encourage you to go home and look at, I know we did foster care, and with our 12-year-old foster son, we just gave him a piece of paper and we put a line down the middle. We said responsibilities and freedoms. What are the freedoms you have in our home? To go out and ride your bike when you want, to invite the neighbor boy over, to watch TV, to play on the iPad. Those are all, okay, so what are the responsibilities we expect from you? What we actually found was he had a lot more freedoms than he had responsibilities. It's just easier to parent that way. We like them happy, there's no conflict. Let them do what they want, and I'll do the rest. I'll clean the house, I'll take out the trash, and they can do what they want. But then when it comes conflict, we're like, what is the problem? Why are they laying on the floor throwing a fit because they don't want to take out the trash and they're 16? Well, because it's your fault. You've created this monster that has lots of freedoms and no responsibility, and all of a sudden you're going to try to get them to do
I
responsibilities.
struggle a bit with that with foster kids, because sometimes they've had to be the parent
Right.
and do everything.
Right, right.
And not got to be a kid at all.
Right, right, right.
So I like to let them be a kid.
Right, right.
So I
It's
struggle
good.
with that.
And finding the limit, what I would suggest you do, tie a freedom to a responsibility. Like, one of the things that we had a parents that came, they said, okay, all we have, if we could get to the end of this parenting class and our kid cleaned their room, we would be happy. Like, we just want a child that cleans their room. We can't stand it. And so I said, okay, so we get to this part. What does he do every night when he comes home from school? Flips on the TV. Okay, so now that's a freedom. The responsibility is your room has to be clean. TV is on, you make the expectation, you say, do you have the freedom to watch TV? They knew, after a while, they knew the room was clean. And so this went on for 2 weeks. And they're like, the room ain't clean. I said, have you turned on the TV? Nope. He's gonna die on this hill. I'm like, fine. I mean, what's the worst thing that happens is he never cleans his room. I mean, that's the worst thing. But until he does not, the TV does not come on unless the room is clean. It took 2 weeks. He went 2 weeks without TV. He loved TV. But eventually, they followed through. And eventually, he said, okay, I'll clean the room. And so every time then after that, the TV just never came on until the room was clean. Those two were always tied together. Okay? If your kids want to go out and play on Saturday, these are the chores you do. Then you can turn on the TV. Then you can play. Then you can do what you want. This is the responsibility of that. And so when I remember clearly when my son called. We always had that. He hated doing chores on Saturday morning. I'm like, I don't care. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but you're not going to do this until this is done. And so his friend calls at 11 o'clock and says, can you come down and play? And he's like, can I go play? And I'm like, do you have the freedom to go play? Well, I'll do it later. I'm like, why? Because they have to go to the other parent's house at 2 o'clock and we don't have any time to play. Sorry. I was so mad at me. I remember that time. It was just, I was like, sorry, no, you can't. And so what happened to the next Saturday?
Probably did it before
He's
Saturday.
up, the room's clean, he's ready to go, he's out the door playing with his friends at 8 a.m., you know? But there was something tied. And you can do that with little kids too. You can do that with little bitty kids too. Yep.
In our house it's a little bit backwards, and it's because we have a teenager, and he's most of the time pretty obedient and does what both me and his dad ask him to do. But our struggle is wanting to spend time with the wrong friends.
Okay.
And learning how, like, he has this one specific friend he really wants to spend time with. And it's hard for me, like, no, I don't know, that's our struggle right now.
Right.
This is who I want to spend my time with.
Yeah,
So
and
just figuring out.
I think, remember, a responsibility doesn't necessarily have to be a chore. A responsibility is doing what we say and what we think is best. That's a responsibility. And so you do get to choose where they go and who they hang out with. And their responsibility is to, as long as they live under your roof, is to do what you say. Okay? So a freedom that may be tied to that is something that they like to do. And it seems unfair and it seems unjust, but they don't have the understanding that you have. You know, I mean, it's just like freedom Phil's gonna talk a little bit more about this at the end, but freedom on the internet, freedom, they don't understand.
Yeah, that was another thing.
They don't
I said.
understand.
I need all your account information.
Right.
If you're gonna have Snapchat, I need the information. You're gonna have
Responsibility
Facebook, give me the information.
Is I get to be on all those, and if I'm not, then and you don't have the freedom of being on the internet. It's
And
just,
lately, he's been talking about dating, and
Yeah.
I said, well, until I know who you
Right.
want to date, and
Right.
I know the parents, and the parents are okay
Yeah.
with you dating
Yeah.
their daughter.
right. Stick
Fine.
to that, sister,
I'll
that's
just-
good stuff.
He said, I'll just do it anyway. And that's not the answer.
Keep going, call me and I'll tell you, because I'm seriously, I've now come to the completion of this. Our son got engaged last weekend, some of you heard that. But just those strong social rules that we put down that they didn't always understand.
And didn't
Always like, but now we're seeing fruition. And just that sense of, they've set their own rules. I was shocked at this 23 and 25-year-old couple and this dating rules they had set for themselves. And I was like, that's crazy. But they understood, we trained the heart of the child, and then they understood. I'm still a little shocked. I'm glad it worked, but it worked.
Can exceptions ever be made?
What?
Can exceptions ever be made?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's where, again, you're training the heart of the child. So you have to decide what is working and why it's working. And there are times, do exceptions have to be made for us? Absolutely. But is the exception the rule? Are you always giving in? Are you always making exceptions? And then it's not okay anymore. That's a good question though, all right? Do you understand the freedoms and the responsibilities? Let's go back and look at, for you guys, look on page 29. And let's just kind of give a review of some of these things that you could do. The first one is meal times, bedtimes, playtime, and homework. Put an X beside those, put an X beside each of those areas that you already have a routine in. Put an X beside if you have a routine in it already. Okay, and then once you've done that, if there's an area that you really don't have a routine or structure in, is there something that you could start this week? Is there something that you could start this week in that area? Okay, does somebody want to share that? Something that you're willing to start this week that you don't have a routine or structure in already? You're shaking.
Well, I actually just implemented it yesterday. So they know when they get home, shoes off and put up, wash your hands and put up your coat and or book bag, right? And it's a given. That's just what you do. You don't have to tell them. Well, here lately, the coat, we got a dog and that's what's kind of throwing them off. So they immediately, when they get home, it's time to let the dog out because he's not potty trained. So it just enters chaos because they've been completely thrown off their routine schedule. So I made a chore chart and it has pictures, you know, but then on top of that, they each have to do 3 chores. And if they do the 3 chores, they get a star. And at the end of the week, they get 4 days. So 4 out of the 5 days of the week, you have to have 3 stars. And if so, you get a reward or like a freedom at the end of the week. But like I told them, okay, if your chore is to pick up your Legos, you're gonna pick up your Legos. If I have to nag you and gripe and moan and bellyache, and an hour later you pick up your Legos, like, we're in charge of the star system.
Right.
Just because you did a chore doesn't mean you get a star for it.
That's good.
So,
Yeah, that's really good. And just, it's the same, it's consistent, you stick
Right.
with it, you keep doing it till it just becomes habit, a routine.
and my hope is that it kind of starts a new routine, so we get home, let the crazy dog out,
Yeah.
have that like little moment of chaos, but then know that when you come back inside and settle
Right,
down.
it's good.
Oh, we still need to do the
good.
things that we used to do.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that answered your question about exceptions. I mean, things happen in life when things are going along, or your life is crazy, but keep coming back to that, and that being the rule. That's good. So what I would encourage you to do this week is set up a routine that you don't have. Okay, let me ask you this. What is the ultimate purpose in this? Why are we doing this? Why are we setting up routines and structures in our home and schedules?
Be better parents.
Okay, why?
So they'll know what to expect.
Okay.
From us, and we'll know what to expect from them.
Okay, what's the long-term result of that?
Love each other, not kill each
Okay,
other.
okay. Consistency, love each other, what'd you say, John?
Responsibility.
Okay, responsibility. Ultimately, don't you want your child to go to work and keep a job and be on time and be kind to others and be the person that the boss trusts and puts them in charge of other people? I mean, ultimately, we're training them for the real world. We cannot just throw all this out, we're not doing it, all of a sudden we can't figure out why they can't get along in a structure in school. We can't figure out why they can't keep a job. You know, we're training something in them. It does make your life easier. Ultimately, it will make your life easier, but at first it won't. At first it's just gonna be hard work. Pay now or pay later, all right? So you're looking at that. Number 2, give a 5 or 10 minute warning before something's going to happen. Avoids frustration. How could you improve in this area? Is anybody good at that already? Any of you think, I'm gonna try that this week, I'm not so good at that? Okay,
The timer's great,
okay, timer's good, yeah.
because they can see it.
Yes,
And you don't go to the other room and forget.
Yeah.
And it's been 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's good.
timer's good.
How can you avoid being a threatening, repeating parent or one that counts and gives too many warnings before expecting your child to obey? You're just gonna decide, aren't you? Okay. Do you do that now? Do you need to make a change in that? Okay. Okay. It's a good thing this week then. Do you see yourself as a calm parent? How can you improve in this area? I'm telling you, this was one that I really had to work on. I was not a calm parent. It was really easy for me to get freaked out. I mean, my kids, even when they're old enough to go, we're freaking out. They knew I was freaking out. You know, but just that sense of being calm. Say what you mean what you say, follow through. Take a deep breath, walk away, parent in non-conflict. These are all very hard, but yet very successful things to do. Children need age-appropriate privileges and freedoms, participating in things they enjoy. What are some of the privileges or freedoms your children have? I would go home and evaluate that. Do they have more freedoms than they do responsibilities? Because this could be a game changer for you. I watch families where I think how do their 12, 13, 14-year-olds just do what they're supposed to do? They hardly even have to ask them. It's just part of the routine. The younger you start doing this, the more it just becomes a habit. This is just how we do life. We had some really good friends. They did a beautiful job of this. And I watched them consistently. You get something out, you put it away before you get the next thing out. That was probably the biggest shocker for me. And she was every single time. She has teenage girls now. Get it out, put it away. Get it out, put it away. That was just her
Everything
thing.
has a place.
And everything
You
has a
can
place.
find it.
But you have to be like that. So we're like, I don't have a place either. And then children are a wonderful addition to the family and should be expected to share in the responsibility. What are some responsibilities and expectations that your children have in your home? And when you said, I have trouble with that because maybe they had too many responsibilities, there's something about being a part of a family, even if they don't always like what they do, you belong here. We love you. We love you so much that you get to be a part of this. This isn't mom and dad's family and you're the king, they're the prince and princesses. This is all of our family. We all have a dog. We all get to feed the dog. We're so blessed to have food to eat. We're all gonna prepare it and clean up. And we love our kitchen. I mean, it's a nice kitchen. And we're gonna clean it up and keep it nice. You know, so this is ours. And I heard somebody say it earlier, but we're the Heekes. Like the Heekes are a great family to be in. Everybody wants to be a Heeke, we tell them. They found out later it wasn't true, but there's some sense of pride that we love each other, we love doing life together, and so we do life together. We have responsibilities, and I think that that's really important. All right, anything that you want to add or subtract today? There's a lot here. What's the biggest takeaway that you have from tonight?
Routine and consistency.
Okay. So you're going to do it this week. Find a routine and keep it consistent. Any other takeaways?
I don't want to be the counting.
Okay, no more counting, threatening,
No more
repeating.
counting and
Okay.
threatening and counting and threatening, just calmly.
Okay.
do.
Okay.
And I think just balancing.
Say it again.
It's all about balance,
Yeah.
right? Balancing freedoms and responsibilities.
Yes, it's really good. It's really good. Finding that in between. Boy, that's hard. One of the ways you can test that if you have small children is take away some of the choices that you've given them and see how they react. You know, things that are harmless, like they always get to choose what cup they drink out of. They always get to choose what shoes they wear. What happens when you take that away? If there's just this total meltdown freak out, then they're struggling with the fact that they don't get to make all the calls. The other thing that we did was we called it funnel parenting. It seemed like we were always doing this, but what happens was when it was out here, everybody was kind of doing what they wanted, and things began to get chaos. And all of a sudden, they thought, I remember thinking, they think they're in charge. And they are. So we would bring it back down and give them less and less choices. And I remember having a family meeting and sitting down and going, okay, things are getting out of control. You're not obeying. You think you can do what you want when you want. So now, no more, we're gonna make the decisions. And when you can handle our decisions, then we'll bring out the funnel a little bit. I mean, we would say things like, you gotta ask permission to get a snack. Because this is you're doing whatever you want, whenever you want. There's a mess everywhere. You're not hungry for supper. Okay, I know this sounds silly and you're 10 years old, but you have to ask to get a snack. And then maybe as that works, then you broaden it out a little, okay? But when they're talking back and all of a sudden they've become in charge. They can say what they want, do what they want. We gotta bring her back in. No more choices. I'll make all the decisions, and we can keep funneling that out and out. So I would encourage you to do that well. That's a good one. Any other takeaways? Questions?
Consistency.
Consistency. So hard. If you're a praying parent, it helps. It really does. Because it's hard to be consistent. God help me be consistent. Remind me quickly, oh, you're going there again. I mean, that consistency is hard. Not being emotionally, not parenting out of emotions is hard, but you can do it. Right, good. Any other questions or comments?
What about things like, if we talked about like brushing your teeth, like you can't take away the toothbrush. You know, you want them to because it's personal
Right.
hygiene, you know?
Right.
So what would be like a good consequence if they're like, no, I'm not gonna
Okay.
brush my teeth?
Again, what could be, the responsibility is teeth brushing. Okay, what's a responsibility that they like that you could tie to that?
Mine is if it takes you longer to get ready, you have to go to bed earlier.
Well, maybe. And even the things like I had, okay, I need you to brush your teeth before you go to bed. So you may have to make them do it, okay? But the next morning, instead of turning on the TV, you're just like, we're just not gonna watch TV today. Because you just had such a hard time brushing your teeth. But tonight, when things go well, then in the morning you can turn on the TV again. It can be related, but it doesn't have to be. One of I had the girl I talked about the week having the mentor with, she just had a horrible time getting her little girl to let her brush her hair in the morning. I mean, it was just horrible. It was just, and so I said, just tomorrow, just let her go. Don't brush her hair. I mean, she's like, oh my gosh. I'm like, no, I'm serious. Just go. If you need to go in and tell the teacher that you're not a bad mother, you're just not going to fight her today, it's fine. Then you get home and there is a consequence for her not. You talk about it. You know, whatever. I can't remember what she took away. I think it was the TV. And then we'll try again tomorrow with the hair. And if that works out, then you can watch TV after school tonight. And she may have to go to school a week without hair. I mean, call the teacher and tell them you're bad.
I've done that.
The little girl she was biracial. I mean, she did have this hair, like it was a problem. but she did, you know, so you can tie those two together and calmly do that. So that might be better I think that's better than like a consequence. It really is a consequence, but do you have the freedom to do that? Do you have the freedom to watch TV? Well, you didn't brush your teeth without a fight last night, so I guess you don't really have that freedom.
Or if you start getting ready for bed at such and such time and you can't get ready before it's supposed to be bedtime, then we'll have to start getting ready for bed early.
Yeah. But if you can be calm, that's really, and you can be consistent. And some of your kids, praise God, we're going to talk about this in one lesson. Praise God, they're strong-willed. I mean, you have some kids that you're like, oh my gosh, but you know what? They're going to be strong-willed in every area of their life. They're going to have the stick-to-itness when they decide it. They're going to happen, and it's going to be how it's going to be. But you're training that, and you're not exasperating that. It's okay that they're very stubborn. You want them to be that in some areas. You're still just shaping that and training that. That's what you're training up a child. You're disciplining them. You're training them as they go. So, all right, on page 30, there's a couple of things, and this is where the scripture reading that we talked about, which I would really go back and reflect on that. Ephesians 6:4, it tells us, don't exasperate your children. You know, the verse right, I think it's before that or after that says, children, obey your parents. And we use that one a lot. The Bible says you better obey your parents. Well, that's fine, but are you also not exasperating them? And so don't bring them to the point of frustration. Parents, so you're not bringing them to that. And then examples that you can improve upon your current parenting, and then go back to your foundation time when you're spending quality time together. These are great things to discuss. What are your expectations? And they probably are different between the two of you. One of you is like, this is how you have to do it. And the other one's like, I don't think that's a big deal. Use your time together and decide how you're going to parent in that area. That's okay. And it's okay to give in to the other person. And I'm going to speak for this in this, that I was the structure, routine, do it this way, this is right, I have a plan, everybody needs to follow it. And Phil was like, not that big a deal. Who really cares? And I was like, we can't do this. We've got to decide. So there were areas that I had to give in. I mean, when it came to teenage girl bedroom, I wanted that darn room clean. And he was like, Jane, honestly, who cares? Shut the door. And so I had to come to the point. I shut the door. Oh, I didn't want to.
So-
But you know what? I go to visit my child in her apartment, first apartment in a college, okay? It is spotless. And she's like, Mom, are you gonna pick up that mug when you're done drinking your coffee? And I'm like, seriously? No, I'm not. But she did grow up okay. She's not a hoarder. Her house looks nice. She's fine. You know, so he was right, but go on camera. He was right. But sometimes we have to give and take in those areas. But for him also, I said, you're not getting ready in the morning. We have to have the shoes by the door and the backpack. You don't understand how important this is. Okay. So he would enforce it then. So so talk about what you want and come up on the same page. But again, that foundation is really important. And then the homework this week. Please do this. Please do your homework. Go back and revisit, making sure you're doing all of these things. Remember, those are the foundational things, and then this one is where the rubber meets the road. If your kids are old enough to sit down with them and say, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna start these things. This is what it's gonna look like. This is a great one to give them the expectations. You went to parenting class on Tuesday night. Wednesday, we learned that you need to have freedoms and responsibilities. You need to understand what I expect of you. Do you understand? Do you understand why we do that? Okay, and then follow through. Don't do it for a week and be gone, though. They won't believe you. They'll quit trusting you in every area. All right? Give an example. You're going to give a 5-minute warning this week, and you're going to give an example when you come back next week. Listen for your children's excuses. What are you doing with those excuses? Don't believe them. Even if they're telling the truth, don't believe them because they'll continue to make that excuse. Number 4, you're going to give an example of a time when you threatened, raised your voice, or are counting. So you need to do that at least one time this week so you have something to write down. So Stacey, you got one in. You got one right. Okay. And no, it's going to happen. So, but you only can happen once.
Use last week's
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Use last week's example. Don't do this example. Expectations and boundaries. One of the things that I find when I teach adult people is they do not know how to set boundaries. Boundaries are a huge issue with people. They don't know when to say no and when to let things go. You're teaching your children how to set boundaries, so do that. Freedoms and responsibilities, you can look at that again at the end of this chapter. There's some examples, and then age-appropriate freedoms and responsibilities that you gave to your children, so you're going to report that next week. And then how can you improve in this area? All right, so you've got 3 things to work on, and you guys are going to do awesome at that. Okay, and then again, like 32 and 33 through 35, those are just extra reading of things that we talked about. There was just so much information. I just wanted to give you to go back, make it age appropriate, but it will work with any age. All right, okay, let's pray. We want to get done on time. We're right on time. God, I thank you that you give us wisdom. You tell us in James that if we ask for wisdom, we will receive it without reproach if we do not doubt. So God, I believe, God, that you gave wisdom tonight to these parents. God, that you've given them insight on how to do things. God, I ask that you give them the faith to trust you and the boldness to be obedient in these areas. And God, I just pray for each of the kids represented in this room. God, that these kids would just be open to receive what their parents have. I thank you for the precious children that you've given each one of us. And God, that help us to be good stewards of that precious gift that you've given us and to not lack in these areas. I just ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.